Hey, good morning. I'm Dave, and today I'm taking a look at the Leofoto G2 geared panoramic head. Um, this is something that I've kind of been looking at as an option for a tripod head, and I haven't really been able to find anything of anybody using it. So I figured maybe I'd just do a little video and try and get a little bit of information out there about what this is and how well it works, at least as far as I can tell. So I guess a little bit of an unboxing is due, since that's what we do on YouTube, right? Comes in a nice little handy pouch. I don't know why you would want this. Once you put it on your tripod, you can't put it back in this. And I'm not in the habit of changing heads. I mean, it's nice, but I don't know. Comes with an accessory pack with an adapter size thing for the threads, so I guess you can do multiple sizes. A couple of hex wrenches and all that. That's really nice. And there it is, the G2. It is an Arca Swiss type mount, which is really nice, and it has a little bit wider base than the typical Arca Swiss base, with a little hole so that you can see the numbers, which is kind of cool until you realize that once you mount your camera on top of this, you can't see any of that, so it's totally worthless. So has a screw type mount. These are not my favorite type mounts because I'm lazy and this takes forever. I kind of like those swivel ones, or the RSS screw type one I like a little better. It's a little bigger. I can get at it a little better. As you can see, this kind of comes into contact with the pan lock, which is kind of a drag. Also, you have a balance or a level on the top, which, how well can you see that now? Not too well. Not the greatest position in the world for that. It would have been nice if it had been off here. You could use it maybe. But I have found that that can be useful. So it has two axes of tilt, a forward, backward, and a side to side, and then a pan on the top. It has a second Arca Swiss mount at the bottom, because I guess according to them you're supposed to mount this in a ball head, which to me sort of defeats the purpose. You know, I want this thing right on my tripod. So that I do all the adjusting from here. I don't want a second point of adjustment that really has, well, can screw up all the other adjustments in essence. I want this nice and solid on a tripod. So let's talk about who this might be good for and who probably shouldn't be using this. I am a real estate and commercial photographer, and this is exactly the sort of head that I want. Something that I can dial in and get an exact level with, and not worry about it. Know that I'm going to be able to take multiple pictures and be able to repeat it. That's what something like this is good for. I've used ball heads, and in a pinch, ball heads work. In fact, when I have a tripod head go out, my backup is a ball head, so I do use them. They're nice, but they're not nearly as nice as something like this, or here's the Benro with the dial, so that you can minutely adjust your tilt and your level. So this is for someone who needs that sort of exacting sort of thing. A real estate photographer, a commercial photographer, a food photographer, a product photography, that sort of thing. This is not the sort of thing that a wildlife photographer would want. I would think if you're shooting fashion, you're probably shooting handheld, so you're not shooting with any sort of head at all anyway. So not the sort of head that you would want. So in my opinion, this is the sort of thing that you would want, and you would want to put a big camera on. I mean, you may be using a Sony. I use Nikon. Whatever you're using. Something that you're going to want to have minute control over is something that you're going to be using a full frame camera with typically. It's got to be built for taking big heavy loads. I'm not thinking like a 600 millimeter sort of lens, but a full frame camera typically. doesn't look like much, especially compared to something like this. It's much smaller. In my hand, I'd say it's a little lighter. But because it's solid aluminum and all you've got is these tracks that run, the way of the tilt, it actually, has a bowl and that other piece fits right in there. So I think size is a little deceiving on this. I think it can be and is more solid or as solid as a bigger tripod mount, but because it sits on top of itself like that, it is much more solid than it would appear to be. The pieces, I think, go 15 degrees up and down in each direction, and they are direct screw mounts, meaning that screw goes right through there, and the part that's moving has essentially like a nut on it, and that screw will move it back and forth. So that's pretty good. Let's see, what else can I say about this before I mount it up? Like I said, it has that Arca Swiss mount at the bottom. I've considered removing that for mounting, but that'll make this maybe not as accessible. You need a little bit of a lift there. What I found in practice too is maybe this might work better if this had a second pan head down here. It would give you the space that you need on this and a little bit more clearance. The way I initially started using this is leveling the top of the head, and then since that was level, this pan would work, and stay level all the way across. But what ends up happening is you end up pointing the camera in a way that's not in a line with either this axis or this axis, and then when you start doing your pan and your tilt, you're not really panning and tilting, you're pan tilting and tilt panning, because you're not on the direct axis. It's not that big a deal. You end up having to make 3 adjustments instead of 2, so you'll do an up down, and then you'll have to do a side to side, and then you'll have to do a final up down to get it exactly level in the viewfinder. But it tended to be just a half a turn here and there to get that final adjustment exactly level. So it wasn't that big a deal. But having a second pan on the bottom might be kind of nice. Anyway, let's put this on a tripod, see how it works, and we'll go from there. One thing I noticed when I was screwing these hold down points into the G2 is, that one bites in firm, but this screw, the way it lines up, it comes up next to where that Arca Swiss mount is in there, which sort of makes it a 2-point hold instead of a 3-point hold. I put this in even further, it'll keep it from turning, but it's not actually holding it down firmly. This one is barely hanging on just the corner of that Arca Swiss mount. So a full flat mount would have been much better and much more stable for holding it. So tighten those down, and hope that holds that on there pretty good. Okay, now that we're all mounted up, let's see how this works. One of the first problems with a tripod of this type is that to level the base, which you would read there, you have to up and down each of the legs. Sometimes that's just not possible, or that's a giant hassle. That's why, like I said, I'm going to start experimenting with a bowl head, because with a bowl head I could set up these legs any way I want, loosen it right here, and then using that bowl level it at that point, which would mean everything is level from there up, which would be a really cool thing. One of the complaints I had when I first got this was that this level on the top of the head is pretty much worthless once you put a camera on there. You're not even going to be able to see that. But it ends up not really mattering a whole lot. You could either, prior to putting the camera on, tilt these and go like that and get that exactly level, and then now the pan will stay perfectly level through the whole circuit, or just end up leveling on the camera, which is fine. Here's the problem I think with this camera mount system is you put this on there, and it's just, you know, look at all these turns I have to make to get that down solid. I like that clip lever. That's a lot faster and a lot cleaner. But as you can see, you know, that's pretty solid. Any jiggle there is jiggle that's inherent to the whole system, not to the tripod itself. You know, it moves very, very cleanly. It has a pan lock, so I can lock that. I guess I turn it that way. There's my pan lock. And then let's look at, see, my tilt is nice and solid. And where's my other one? Right there. I do like the feel. I don't know if it's called screw pitch or what, but I feel that the amount of movement for each twist is exactly what I want. It gives me very minute control and very exacting control over exactly where that camera is going to be pointed. So really happy with it in use. And this is how I would use this in the field. I would just come to a point where, you know, I was setting up my shot, and I just, you know, okay, there's roughly where I want to be. I can see I'm not level or flat. So let's get to our level, turn to our flat. Notice that the level goes out when I do that. That's because the two axes are crossed with the plane of the lens. I don't know how to say that more exact, but you know, they're different. So now I've got the up and down, and I just go back and readjust this one more time. There, now I've got it perfectly flat and level, and then I would shoot that, maybe frame it up a little nicer or something, of course. Obviously light it, but there you go. That's how I would use that. So my conclusions after using this both in the field and at home doing tests and things like that, I think it's solidly built. I like the build quality. I do wish it were a little bigger. It just feels small and unsubstantial and maybe slightly not professional because of the size. You know, I'd like something that felt a little beefier. But I think it's solidly built. I think the size is a little deceptive because, as I said, you know, it cradles itself in those cups, so it's a lot more solid than you would think. Compared to the Benro, I felt that the Benro is a little clunky. I like it based on the price. The price is really good. You know, it is, I think, about the cheapest gearhead that you can get. And it works fairly well. These massive unlocks I don't like, especially compared to the Manfrotto. See, this one's kind of there. It gets stuck. I don't like it as well as the Manfrotto for use. I've had this, I think, since September, October. I haven't had any problems with it. I do like the lock a lot better on this than on this. This is absolutely the worst camera lock of all three, the Benro and the Manfrotto. And I do like having the ball levels everywhere, although, you know what, I've never ever used them. I use the level on the camera because that's ultimately what has to be level. So, you know, I look at that. These are just too hard to see. This is covered by the lens. You know, this would be a lot better if this were tilted 90 degrees this way or that way. When you put the camera on here and you've got the lens going this way, this is hard to get to. Obviously this is not good and this is not good, so you got to turn it around, put the camera this way, and that puts the lens over this. Again, not good. It would be so much better if you know, the lens wasn't covering up the things you needed to get to. So Benro, very inexpensive. It's a great way to get into a good solid tripod head. And so far, knock on wood, it's been a great tripod. I haven't had problems with it. Comparing it to the Manfrotto, which you see here, oh, no you don't. You want to know why? Because it's back being fixed. I've had to send it in a couple of times to have it fixed. The Manfrotto while I think feels good and has a great weight to it, and when it's working, it works really well, it doesn't work that good for that long a time. I think it's, I don't know what's wrong with it. It's, I guess, poorly made, like a lot of Manfrotto products these days. Haven't been really happy with a lot of stuff I've gotten from Manfrotto. Tripods break easily. They're just, I think their quality control is poor, and I think their quality is poor. I think they're just pumping stuff out now and stamping their name on it. And really, you know, I would put Manfrotto tripods in the lower level with, you know, the Manfrottos and the Benros and the other less expensive things, because they're not making a quality product. Quality tripods are your Gitsos, your RSSs, things like that, and your older Manfrottos. Those I think there's a lot of really good old Manfrottos, but not to totally bitch out on Manfrotto, but you know, they're just not working well. Again, like I said, I sent it back, I think in November, to have it worked on and fixed. I got it back in January, which I think is a little bit too long for it to be gone. Got it back, used it 3 times, and this is what happened. Well, as you can see, that's just not usable, period. So I finished that day using a ball head because that was my backup. Pulled that off, put the Benro back on, and sent it off to Manfrotto for a second repair. It's still gone, so we'll see how that works out. But now that I saw this and decided to take a shot at it, I'm really happy with it. I am going to use this. I'm going to not use the Benro. I'll use the Benro as a backup now and use this as my primary and see how it holds up. There's not a whole lot of moving parts. You know, it's directly screws into bolts that turn it, so I think as long as it's kept clean, I think it should last a good long time. You know, like I said, I'm a little concerned about the size, but that's just visual. I don't really think in practice that's going to be a problem. One thing, I have made a change in my the way I work going forward is I've gotten a new tripod with a ball leveler. My background is TV news photography, and all our video cameras had a ball head that you could adjust the level right there on the right there where the head meets the tripod, so that you could do that level. And I think that'll solve my problem. I'll probably do a video when that tripod comes in and I give it a chance to test it and see what happens. But I think that's going to solve a lot of my problems. You know, it is a bit of a heavier tripod too, but I don't mind that. I think when I'm having to shoot multiple exposures, you know, I need a heavy tripod that's going to stay stable. I did a shoot last night, and probably shot in the neighborhood of 200 images that all have to overlay. I may not use all 200 images, but I want to be able to use any of those 200 images. So that's what I'm thinking going forward. So bottom line on this little bad boy, I'm going to give it a shot. I think it'll work well. I'm really happy with the feel and the way it works right now. It seems to hold my camera super steady. I don't have any wiggle that is coming from this at all. So I'm super happy with it. Price, I think, was about $200, which puts it just a little bit above the Benro, which was, I think, $159. May have gotten a special on that too. I don't remember. But $200, you know, like I said, I thought that was worth risking it just to see how this thing worked, and super happy with it. The Manfrotto, the 405, I think, isn't that somewhere in the 500s or 600s? You know, and then the other obvious comparison for this is the Cube by Arca Swiss, which is $1,500. Yeah, I'd like to do that. I think we all would. But $1,500 is a little bit more than I can just play with right now and see how it works. So, you know, if I buy 6 of these, that's the Arca Swiss. I think I can do that. So I'll go forward using this and maybe do another video in a couple of months on how it holds up after 3 or 4 months of heavy use in the field. I am very brutal on equipment. I don't think anything about sending something back and have it fixed or worked on because I want to be able to grab my equipment, go in, do a shoot, come out, throw it in my car, move on. I don't baby my gear, and I'm not going to start babying my gear for any reason. I expect professional level gear to hold up to stuff like that. That's the way I worked in news. That's the way I work right now. I don't just throw cameras in the car. I'll throw those in a bag and then throw them in the car. But I expect this stuff to hold up and to last years and years and years. $200. Let's see what happens. Thanks a lot for watching.